Welcome to our new segment, Kiki's Quick Animal Facts. It's January, so that means it's Extinct Animal Awareness Month, where we raise awareness about recently extinct animals that were hunted, deforested, or killed off by an invasive species. Also, before we begin, I'd like to say that Australia has been devastated by bushfires since September of 2019. Firemen, rescue workers, and countless others have been working tirelessly to help the residents and wildlife. Australia gets yearly bushfires, but this is the largest one in history. Climate change didn't start the fire, but it is severely exacerbating it. So far, 20 people have died, 30 have gone missing, and over 480 million animals had been killed, and sadly counting. Everyone from the Red Cross, RSPCA, firefighters, police, military are helping as much as they can, while zoos such as Australia Zoo, Melbourne Zoo, Australia Wildlife Conservancy, World Wildlife Fund, and many more are helping the wildlife such as kangaroos, bats, koalas, wombats, dingoes, and many more help escape the blaze. Please consider donating to the link I listed in the description. We may not be able to help physically, but we can help financially and spiritually. Thank you. Number 10. The Carolina parakeet, or the Caenorhopsis carolinensis, is the only indigenous species of parrot in the eastern United States. They were found from New York, Wisconsin, all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, and even towards the Mississippi River. The last known wild bird was killed in Okeechobee County, Florida in 1904, and the last captive bird died in the Cincinnati Zoo on February 21, 1918. The male bird was named Incus, who died within a year of his mate, Lady Jane. The Carolina parakeet is believed to have died out due to the pet trade, making space for more agricultural land, and hunting, as the bird's colorful feathers were in demand as decorations for ladies' hats. Farmers also considered them a pest, despite them controlling the invasive cockleburs. Number 9. The Bramble K. Melomes, or Melomes rubicola, is considered the first mammal to go extinct due to man-made climate change. They lived on a small island called Bramble Cay in the eastern Torres Strait of the Great Barrier Reef. The mouse was last seen by a fisherman in 2009, but failed attempts to trap them in 2014 led scientists to believe that they had gone extinct. The small island they lived on was 10 feet above sea level. From 1901 to 2010, the sea level had rose an astounding 8 inches, which seems ridiculous until you realize that the level of rising is unparalleled by any other century for the last 6,000 years. Around the Torres Strait, the water level had rose almost twice the global average range from 1993 to 2014. Sadly, due to living on an island, there was no escape for the mouse from the rising waters. Sadly, this will be the first of many animals that will be affected by anthropomorphic climate change. Number 8. The quagga, or Equus quagga quagga, is a subspecies of zebra that lived in South Africa over 100 years ago. The name quagga came from their call, which apparently sounded like quahaha. Little is known about their behavior, but they gathered in herds of around 30 to 50. After the Dutch settlement of South Africa, the quagga was sadly hunted for their pelts and to protect the vegetation they shared with domestic livestock. Some were taken to European zoos, but the breeding programs were unsuccessful. The quagga sadly went extinct in 1878 after the last wild herd was seen in Orange Free State in South Africa. The last captive equine died in Amsterdam on August 12, 1883. Only one quagga has ever been photographed alive, and only 23 skins are still around today. Because of the Quagga project started in 1987 in South Africa by Reinhold Rau, quagga-like zebra population are being selectively bred. These animals have reduced stripe patterns and brown shades of fur and a different gene selection than plain zebras. Sadly though, these Rau quaggas will only be cosmetic, as the true quaggas will be forever gone. Number 7. The dodo bird, or Rhaphis cucullatus, is a large flightless bird that lived on the uninhabited island of Mauritius. These birds were discovered by Dutch sailors in 1598. Legend says that the sailors were able to walk right up to the birds without the birds fleeing. This led popular opinion about the dodo being dumb and bumbling. Sadly, due to the bird being trusting and ground-dwelling, they became an easy target for the sailors. They were eaten, beaten, and gathered in droves aboard the ships to be eaten later. Sailors also let out their pigs, goats, cats, and rats. The dodo built their nests on the ground and only laid one egg per season, and the introduction of the rats ultimately sealed the fate of the bird. If the rats weren't eating the eggs, the pigs and goat were eating their food, and the cats were eating them. The dodo went extinct in 1662, and because they went extinct in less than a century after being discovered, they were thought to be a mythical creature for a long time. A few fossils, a soft tissue head, and a skull are a few of the specimens that were gathered from the long extinct member of the pigeon family. Number 6. The po'ouli, or Melamprosops phaeosoma, or commonly known as the black-faced honeycreeper, was the first species of honeycreeper to be discovered since 1923. They were discovered in 1973 by students of the University of Hawaii. The po'ouli isn't like the other Hawaiian birds, though. According to DNA, they belong to an ancient lineage of Hawaiian honeycreepers and had no extant close relatives, if they even had relatives at all. No other living or extinct bird had a similar structure to them. During a search for the bird in 2004, only 3 had remained. A male was captured but was elderly and sick. Sadly, the male died and the 2 others had never been seen again. They were officially declared extinct in 2019. The reason for extinction was the introduction of pigs, rats, and cats, and deforestation forced predators to drive deeper into the forest where the birds had resided. The other cause was disease and declining food sources. The Hawaiian land snail had slowly been declining, which was a primary food source for the birds. The land snails themselves went extinct in 2019 as well. Number 5. The Xerxes Blue, or Glochopsyche xerxes, was a gossamer-winged butterfly that was discovered in 1852. They were the first American butterfly to become extinct as a direct result of urban expansion and loss of habitat. The last Xerxes Blue was seen in 1946. They lived on the coastal sand dunes of the Sunset District in San Francisco. They fed on plants that were in the lotus and lupinus genus of plants. The lotus genus couldn't survive in the upturned soil in the developing areas of humans. This was the staple diet of the butterfly in their larval stage, as the lupinus genus couldn't sustain the larvae. The butterflies would mate, but the babies would either starve to death or the butterflies just couldn't lay their eggs at all. Quickly, they disappeared forever, and in the words of veterinarian and author Mark Germone Walters, when the tiny wings of the last Xerxes Blue butterfly ceased to flutter, our world grew quieter by a whisper and duller by a hue. Number 4. The laughing owl, or Sceloglox albifacis, was a New Zealand owl that was plentiful when discovered by scientists in 1845. They lived in ground-dwelling nests and were famous for their maniacal laugh. Their diets consisted of mice, bats, tuataras, fish, geckos, frogs, birds, and much more. And with the introduction to the Pacific rat, the laughing owl just expanded their menu. Sadly, the introduction to the rat also included the introduction to the cat. Then, when the settlers to New Zealand didn't like rabbits too much, they introduced weasels and stoats, which found that the nesting owls and owl eggs were just as tasty. The birds were also found to have fallen prey to bird lice, and by 1880, the species were becoming more and more rare. The last remaining laughing owl was found dead in Canterbury, New Zealand on July 5th, 1914. Number 3. The Haast Eagle, or Hieratus muri, was the largest eagle to have ever existed. They lived in New Zealand over 800 years ago. Their wingspan was an impressive 9 feet long, and they even hunted humans. Although their primary diet was the giant moa, which also went extinct as well. They were very successful as the top predator of the island of New Zealand, but even the top predator has a very fragile ecosystem they must depend on. When the Maori arrived, they drove the giant moa into extinction by killing them for food and ceremonial bones and feathers. This ultimately killed the Haast Eagle, as the giant moa was their primary food. It's said that the force with which the eagle struck their prey was the equivalent of a cinder block falling from an 8-story building. They attacked at around 50 miles an hour. The Haast Eagle went extinct around 1400 AD after the Maori people hunted the giant moa into extinction. Number 2. The Caribbean monk seal, or Monachus tropicalis, was the first seal to go extinct due to human activity. They were also the only seal native to the Caribbean area and were also known as sea wolves. This name came from Christopher Columbus, who, while aboard the Nina in 1497, ordered 2 sailors to kill the animal for meat, blubber, and fur. Seals in Spanish are sometimes known as lobos marinos, which means wolf of the sea. This is probably due to the seal's resemblance to the colors of wolves and their ability to howl at other seals. They grew to be about 8 feet long and weighed 600 pounds. They had no flight instinct when it came to humans, but they were a curious creature, and ultimately that ended badly for them. The monk seals were hunted by European settlers and fishers for their meat and fur, but mostly for the blubber that was used to light lanterns and oil the bottom of ships. In the late 19th and 20th centuries, some were captured for aquariums in an effort to preserve the species. As they were becoming rarer and rarer, remaining colonies were hunted to obtain dead specimens for study. Ironically, the last remaining seals were possibly killed due to scientific interest. The last group of seals is believed to have been seen in 1952. Number 1. The Kawaii O, or Moho brachatus, is a Hawaiian native bird that is a bit of a rock star. This bird has a song that you can still listen to today and is the only O that has a song that has been heard by living people. They lived exclusively on the island of Kauai and lives deep in the native forests, and these birds are pretty hard to find. Sadly, the Kawaii O was just another victim of invasive species such as feral pigs, Indonesian rats, and feral domestic cats. When human development expanded into forests, the birds disappeared into a higher altitude and became more and more rare as less birds were mating. Mosquitoes that carried an avian disease also attributed to wiping them out. The final blow was 2 hurricanes that hit the island, causing the O to lose more and more trees to nest in. In the 1970s, their song was recorded that you can still hear. The bird was listed as officially extinct in 1987. Here's their song. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Kiki's Quick Animal Facts. If you like this episode, please leave a like, a comment, and please subscribe to learn more about animals and the environment. If there's an animal that you'd like a quick fact about in the next episode of Kiki's Quick Animal Facts, please leave that comment down there as well. If you liked the Kiki's Fun Animal Cam, please let me know and we can return that as well. Please consider donating to the Australian Bushfire Funds in the link that I left in the description below. Thank you very, very much, and we'll see you next time on Kiki's Fun Animal Facts. Bye!